Welcome to episode 2 of Beyond Grief, the podcast that aims to explore the different facets of grief. Today's guest is Jonathan Lopez, who will be sharing his experience in the loss of his beloved parents, Magdalena and Alvino Lopez. Jonathan, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you. To start off the podcast, I'd like for you to share a story or share a little bit about your mom and dad.
Yeah, of course. My mom, Magdalena, was born and raised in Mexico until I believe she moved 14, or 13. She moved to the States. My dad was born here in the U.S., El Paso, Texas, to be exact. And then from my understanding, they met in high school as high school sweethearts. Instantly, they fell in love with each other. My mom said that when she saw him, she knew that that was the one. And the same thing with my dad. I think they were like 16, 17. And then from there, fell in love, got married at 18, had my brother at 18, my sister at 19. And they were together until they passed. And then I came around, I think, when my mom was 32. So yeah, I was the baby, or I'm the baby, yeah.
And what did your dad do? What did your mom do?
My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Well, I take it back. My mom, from my understanding, she worked when my brother and sister were kids. And my dad, he was self-employed. He owned his own business. And then when I came around, because my mom was so much older at the time, she had difficulties with the pregnancy with me because of the fact that she was a lot older. She was in her 30s. So she was pretty much bedridden, I think, after the 6th month. So when she gave birth to me, my dad was like, listen, you don't have to work anymore, So she pretty much from that moment on became a stay-at-home mother, and she kind of just raised me. And then, like I said, my dad was a self-employed. He owned those business. And how was she as a mom raising you? What are some things that remind you of your mom, or that you can remember growing up? My mom was a light. I think that's the best way I always describe my mom. My mom was just one of the most beautiful human beings that ever existed. I think she was non-judgmental. She loved everybody. She was warm. She was caring. Outside of being a housewife, she was also a babysitter. So she, raised so many different children, from my nieces, my nephews, little cousins, family friends. She raised all these little kids because she just had such a big heart when it came to children. She was a little dingy, a little bit of a klutz. She just kind of tend to make little common mistakes, around the house. But she was such an amazing, warm person. And like I said, she just loved everyone, and she never judged anyone for who they were. And she treated everyone with respect. My dad was very stoic, which is a dichotomy from my mom. He was very calm, collective, a man of very few words, a man of very, very few words. But he was a great man. He was hardworking. There was no doubt that he loved my mom. He provided for my siblings and I. He was just very quiet, and, he didn't really say much, but what he knew that he loved you. So it was a great childhood. They were great parents, and like I said, they loved each other, and there was never any question about that.
So, as a mom, what do you remember? How did she raise you as a mom?
That's a great question. I know my siblings and I always have that conversation about how we were raised, because like I said, when my mom raised them, she had to work. So when she raised me, she didn't have to. So she was very hands-on as a parent. She was the carpool lady in this massive van who took us to school. She was, she would be cooking, and I would be learning my, spelling bee practices in the kitchen. She was super, making sure that I was studying, doing my homework. And she was that parent that, come Halloween time, she would make my costumes. It was a pumpkin or a pirate or a vampire. she was, I remember she always smelled so good. She always liked to smell good. And it was interesting. I thought about it this week. Her hands were always really soft. Like, I remember holding her hands, and they were always really, like, moisturized. And I think that was really important for my mom, because she loved to look nice. Even though she was a stay-at-home mother, she always loved to look presentable. You know, she liked shopping. She liked having nice things. She liked having jewelry. She liked having her makeup done and stuff like that. And that's one of the things I recall at home. You know, she was babysitting, making sure I did my homework, but cooking and cleaning, and she did everything, which was really weird, because I don't know how a mom could do that, because there's only 24 hours in a day, right? And she did it all, and I was like, with such ease and excitement, which I can imagine that's not necessarily easy when you're raising 3 kids and being a wife and a mother and a caregiver. But she did it, and she made it seem flawless.
Yeah.
And then my dad, like I said, he worked hard, never complained. I don't recall ever from my childhood ever seeing my dad call in sick, because I don't think he had that luxury as a self-employed man. So it was one of those things that he taught me, that work ethic that I think to this day I still have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, how were they as a couple? Can you tell us a little bit about them being a couple? The couple, stories that you remember.
They loved each other. I think it was in every year for their anniversary, my dad would bring her flowers, roses, red roses for that matter. She loved roses, and not just a small bouquet, like a massive bouquet of roses. Like I said, he wasn't a man of merry words, but you knew he loved you. And my mom knew that. You know, he would buy her these things, and he was always buying her rings and jewelry and taking her out to dinners. Like, in that sense, they were just that couple, like, that you see on the street at a restaurant, or like if you're at the mall and you see an older couple holding hands. That was them. And I remember as a child, I'm like, it's really not that serious. But it was to them, and they loved each other for that. Like, they were so in love with each other, and I never heard them fight. I never heard them argue. It was an interesting relationship to see, because they loved each other so much, and it was, great. Yeah.
Is there a story that you can share with us that that you can still remember? Something funny about them, something silly, something that when you were younger you might say, "Ew, gross!" Like, what are you doing? Between them, a memory that that sticks to you.
I to be honest with you, I don't. I think all the time I would just see them holding hands, or like giving each other kisses on the cheek or the mouth, and those little things I would always be like, oh, like, gosh, like, that's kind of weird. But like a specific memory, like, I don't have it. I just recall my entire childhood it being that, always just kind of seeing it and thinking, like, it's not, like I said, not that serious, like you guys. But a specific memory, no, I can't remember that.
Any holidays, special things that your mom and dad liked to do for holidays, or what were the holidays like in your home?
Yeah, no, my family was a huge holiday person. I think my dad, his 2 favorite holidays, Thanksgiving and 4th of July. Thanksgiving, obviously, for the food. 4th of July, because of the barbecuing. He would love all that stuff. He was very patriotic. My mom, I think she loved all holidays, but I would like to say Christmas was always her holiday, where, she would decorate and she would cook, and that was one of the things that I always really appreciated about my parents. They were very, in terms of tradition and customs, they instilled that in my siblings, that to this day we still do. I think even Halloween, for that matter, we would decorate our front yard. Our Christmas, we have our stockings that are probably old, just as old as I am, that we hang in our living room till this day. And it's those little things that my parents showed us all the time. And as a kid, you don't really think they matter. Like, they're not that big of a deal. But now, those are the key moments or events in my childhood that I remember that we still do to this day. You know, my siblings and I with their kids and myself, you know, those little traditions that we had that, you know, my sister and my brother are instilling in his kids, and I do myself, you know.
Now fast forward
Yeah.
to your mom getting sick.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about when you learned when she got sick? What transpired during that time?
Yeah, no, I think so. I was obviously, as the baby, I was a huge mama's boy. Huge. I think there's always jokes that, you know, I wouldn't leave my mom's side at a party because I would not want to leave her, and it would have to take me an hour to just kind of be comfortable to go play with the other kids. So I always was so close to my mom, and I think subconsciously I always had this fear that she was going to pass away, which was something that I recall, one of the earliest memories I recall at 6, 7, going into the kitchen and kind of she's washing dishes, and I just had like this, I was sad, and I grabbed her hand and I was like, she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't want you to die. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I don't want you to die. And she said, why are you even thinking that? And I think, you know, as a kid, you don't think of death, but for some reason, I don't know what it was a movie or something I read, it occurred to me that that's a reality. And she's like, don't worry, I'm not gonna die until I'm old. And I think from that moment on, it was an idea that festered in my brain till I grew up. And fast forward to 2008, my mom was having some difficulties with her body. I think my nephew gave her a bear hug and he hurt her rib, and she didn't know what it was. And she went to the doctors and they said that he kind of cracked her rib, but they didn't really understand why, because it wasn't a hard hug. And I remember one night specifically driving with my friend to go do an errand, and I was telling them how my mom's doctors think that she has fibromyalgia. And I told her, I was like, oh God, I told my friend Joyce, I was like, I really hope it's fibromyalgia. Like, and I was like, I just can't fathom if it's gonna be cancer. She's like, no. She's like, it's gonna be that, don't worry. And then fast forward to, I think, a couple weeks, my brother goes to the doctor with my mom, and everyone calls my family to come to my house, and my brother, my sister, my brother and my mom get there, and she has all of us, like my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, us, and she's like, I have cancer. And I instantly, like, that idea of death just came back, and it was, like I said, it was like a ghost that was haunting my entire childhood, and I was like, boom, I'm back. And yeah, she got diagnosed in 2008 with multiple myeloma, which is a very rare disease, and to be honest with you, I don't recall ever hearing it or anything. I know when they finally gave her that diagnosis, I made the mistake of Googling it and looking at it, and I remember going on Wikipedia and scrolling all the way to the bottom to say, like, the survival rate, and just saying, like, God, let it be high, and then it wasn't the greatest, and I remember closing the computer and be like, no, this is gonna be different. So yeah, she for 3 years she had her battle with multiple myeloma. Essentially, it's a cancer of the plasma cells in your white blood cells, so it pretty much deteriorated her bones. She had her ups where, you know, she had a I forget that, when they replace your your bone marrow, like they do the
Is it the bone marrow transplant?
Yeah, the bone marrow transplant. I remember that, and it was Halloween, actually, ironically, which is very fitting to right now. And everyone, like, they brought her a birthday cake, and they were like, that we usually celebrate because it's like a rebirth of you. And I had hope, and I was like, she's gonna get back to normal. Like, this is her opportunity, and it came back. And then, yeah, unfortunately, I think in 2011 in November, so pretty much 3 years, she passed away. Yeah.
How did you deal with it? How did you deal with those 3 years? How did you deal? What were your thoughts during those 3 years? Right?
Yeah, no, I think those
Your
3
beliefs,
years,
your hopes.
my hopes. I think those 3 years, my anxiety was pretty much at a 10 every single day. I would wake up with that fear or that ghost that my mom was gonna die, or there was a chance. I would do research. I would look at homeopathic remedies. I remember there was some kind of herbal plant that was meant to kind of increase your cell count to help you. I was constantly buying it for her, making teas for her, giving it to her, making sure she ate better, doing her breathing exercises. I wanted to do everything I could to help her, but there were also moments where when seeing her at her worst or at her sickest, I couldn't bear myself to see her. Like, it was a double-edged sword, because I wanted to help, but then I couldn't see her, because seeing her was reality, that she was deteriorating in front of me. And I tried to be optimistic and pray and try to make compromises with a higher being and promise things so that she would survive. And I think I just wanted her to just live. And I think having hope, when hope was such a hard thing to have, helped me, but also scared me. And I think it was hard. It was hard, and it was awful. And I wanted to absorb every single moment of those 3 years with her, because I didn't want to forget her, but also being with her was so hard, because I saw the person that I knew not being the same. And I kept going. I worked. I had gone back to school to get my degree, so I focused on my education at the same time while she was, getting treatments and seeing the doctor. It was probably the hardest time of my life, yeah.
Did her passing change your beliefs in the higher being, like you said? Did it make you question?
Yeah.
Right?
No, absolutely. I remember the Sunday my mom passed away, when we finally left the hospital. I remember for the first time in those 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. Because, like I said, for 3 years, I was holding my breath and hoping. And at that moment, it was like my bubble had bursted, and I was able to finally breathe, even though the breath was excruciatingly painful. I could breathe. And I remember looking up at the moon and just nodding my head and not really understanding it. And I think for a year afterwards, I didn't pray. And growing up Catholic, going to Catholic school my entire life, I believed in God and believed in a higher being. And I think I always had such a strong relationship with the higher being. I prayed every night. I spoke to him during the day. I would have little side conversations in my head with him. And that moment, that Sunday, I was like, I can't do this, nor do I want to. And I lost hope, and I turned my back on my religion and my faith, because I felt like he turned his back on me. And I think, like I said, for a year, I didn't pray. I didn't speak to God, or whatever you want to call it. And I felt lost. I felt more lost than when I was dealing with my mom's illness. It felt uncomfortable. I felt like was so angry at him, but I felt like I needed him more than ever. And I don't know what made me go back to him a year later and just start talking to him again. But like I said, it just felt like it was something missing in my life. I felt like I was going through the motions, but not fully, because there was something not keeping me safe. So I had to kind of, I don't want to say be at peace with my mom's passing, but tell myself it is what it is, and start having that relationship with a higher being again.
Because you have always been so passionate about it, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It was, I had such a, like I said, a strong relationship with the higher being, and had so much faith that he was going to heal her. So for him to have done that, or for her to have passed, I just couldn't wrap around, my head couldn't wrap around the idea that someone like myself, who believed in him, has such a relationship. Like, how could he have done this to me, and how could he have done that to her?
Yeah. You felt let down.
Let down. Extremely disappointed, which in hindsight, it's probably a little hubris of me to think, oh, he let me down, when other people have experienced the same thing. But at that moment, I just felt, like I said, I had such a strong relationship with him, that to have done that to that person, because my mom was my person.
That's right.
She was my person, and to no longer have her there, I just felt like I had no interest in having a relationship with a higher being anymore.
Yeah.
Because there was no point.
Absolutely. So, fast forward again. Unfortunately, you were dealt with a double whammy.
Yeah.
Your father passing away about 3 years after your mother.
Yep.
Can you speak to us a little bit on that as well?
Yeah. Like I said, the first year after my mom's death, it was hard because I had lost that faith. The interesting thing about my dad's passing, and it's something that, like, I get a silver lining, if there is one, was that being so close to my mom, I never had the closest relationship with my dad. Never. I think it was a combination of him being really stoic, me being a mama's boy, me being at the time closeted, me thinking he wasn't going to accept it. I don't know. It was a combination of everything, that I never had that close relationship with him. But when my mom passed, my dad stepped in that role, which was, I didn't see it until later, where he would wash my clothes. We would go have lunch. We would go eat. We would go to the movies. We would talk. I remember he would pick me up at 3 a.m. from West Hollywood when I'm drunk, having a crazy night out with all the gays. He would pick me up. He became that person that I relied on with my mom. So for him to, January 1st, 2014, to get him to get a stroke, and then him to be hospitalized, and then to have his leg amputated, and then in June him passing by himself in a rehab center, it was surreal. I think there was this moment that in my head when my mom was sick, that I was like, God, I just can't have that call that my mom's dead when I'm working or I'm at school. Like, I couldn't deal with that call. I didn't have that call. Fast forward, my dad, that Tuesday, at work, and my brother calling me, and he's like, my dad's gone. And I was like, what? And he's like, my dad's gone. He's passed away. And I was like, my whole soul just kind of dropped to the floor. And I remember just running to one of my coworkers, and I was like, oh my God, my dad's dead. And she's like, what? And she's like, my dad passed. And it felt like I was pulled back into that sense of surrealness that I'd experienced with my mom. But you add the layer that the only parent that I had left was gone. It just made it more surreal. And I remember her taking me to the rehab center where my dad was, and all I could say in the car was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, not even crying, but just like, oh my God, this is me as a son is gone. Like, that is gone. My parents are gone. Like, oh my God. And it was fuck, excuse my French, like, it was surreal. It was that's all I could say. It was, oh my God, was the best way I could explain what I was experiencing at that time, because I felt like that's it. The life of a child with the parents, like, that's it. Those chapters are gone, done, and the rest of my life is going to be without that. And oh my God, was the best way to describe it, because it was, the
fact that you're now no longer a son, right?
Yeah.
You're and I hate to use the word orphan in a sense, right?
And I say that word all the time in joking.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an orphan. But it's, I mean, yes, orphan, you don't know who your parents are, you don't have any. I knew my parents, but ultimately I don't have them anymore. Yeah. And you're right, it's,
The reality
is, it's rough. It's rough. It's, I think I do my best to not think about it, which is also my downfall. Having been so many years now, 11 with my mom, 9 with my dad. I think that's been my downfall of it all. Not, what's the word?
Not
coping.
Grieving, maybe?
Not grieving.
Not grieving.
Yeah. Not grieving correctly. And obviously grieving,
and
there's
not
no
correctly.
process.
Exactly. Because there's no right or wrong way.
There's no right or wrong way.
But
I
just not
think
being able to grieve.
Not being able to grieve. And I think for such a long time, when my mom passed, I told myself I had one more year of school. I need to focus on school so I can get that degree that I tried so hard to get, so my mom could see it before she died. And obviously she didn't do it. She didn't have that opportunity, but I told myself, I'm going to finish school. I'm going to do this so I don't have the time to grieve, because if I grieve, I am not gonna ever get out of my bed. Once I had my degree and my profession, it was like, no, I'm over it. I don't need to do that anymore. I'm good. And then my dad passed away. I was doing so well with my life that I was like, I can't really deal with this either. I don't want to. And I put it away in a box with my mom and kind of just put it in the closet, my mental closet of things. And I was like, okay, it hurts, it's sad, but I can do this. And fast forward, like I said, many, many years, I'm like, I realized, like, I can't do that. I can't do that.
I need to let it out. I need to let it out. I need to take it out of the box.
Yeah, take it out of the box and be like, let's do this. Yeah.
So you'll say, or can you say that putting that grief in the box was your coping mechanism?
Absolutely,
in a sense, right?
Absolutely. I felt at that time that was the only way I was going to survive. Because it was never a sense that I was suicidal. Absolutely not. It was a sense that if I chose to grieve my person, my mom, I was never going to get out of bed. It was like a Pandora's box of just feelings of being shattered, that I was like, I can't do that. I'm going to school.
Yeah.
I need to finish and get my education. So it was my way of coping. It was my way of surviving. And the same thing with my dad. I was like, whoa, I'm already here with my job and my career. I can't go backwards. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm a logical person. And I was like, I can't go back. Ya pa qué? You know, for what?
Yeah.
And I did that. And it was my way of surviving. But I think you add the complexity of now being that orphan, if you will, if you use that term. I put that to the side, to that box as well. Not the grievance of both parents, but that idea that I'm no longer a son. I put that to the side and I became me. Just Jonathan. Just a singular man. A single man. I don't have a family. That I just kept going. And that's what I did, thinking I was going to be fine, when deep down inside I knew I wasn't fine.
When you finally hit rock bottom,
yeah.
in a sense, right? Have you hit rock bottom in a way with your grieving process? Do you think?
I don't know for me, I don't know if there is a rock bottom. I don't think I've hit it. I think it's been very transparent to me in the last 3 or 4 years that I need to figure that out. I think it's affected my ability to make relationships, my current relationships, because there's this inability for me to be vulnerable, because I don't know how to be vulnerable, allow myself to be vulnerable with that. Mm-hmm. And my therapist tells me all the time, he's like, you have to give yourself some grace in order to give other people grace.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you have to allow yourself to heal from that. And I've asked them, what if I can? He's like, I'm pretty sure you can. You can. And it's why I'm here. It's why I'm here with you guys, because that was
and I
my
thank
thing.
you so much.
No, thank you.
I know it's hard. I know it's hard, and like I said, it's a deep conversation. It's a tough conversation to have, but I'm so grateful that you are having it with us. And I know you talk about being vulnerable,
right?
And I think that's something. You closed off. You closed that vulnerability, right? I don't want to be vulnerable because I have A, B, C, and D to take care of. Yeah. And if I do grieve and become vulnerable, I might not achieve A, B, and C.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And we talk about the right and the wrong way. And there is no way. There is no way. It's your way.
Exactly.
That's the way you chose to deal with it. Now at this point, at this stage in your life where you're older, where, again, you're very logical. You said that you're a very logical thinking person, but at the same time, I think now in this stage of your life, you are more willing to open up and be a little more vulnerable, right? And hopefully be able to grieve in whatever way you find it acceptable to you. Now, do you ever feel that you were judged in some way because you were very, I'm not going to grieve, I'm not going to break down, you're not going to see me crying, you're not going to see me vulnerable? Do you ever feel that family, friends judged you and said, what is the problem? What's wrong with Jonathan?
No,
why doesn't he cry?
No, and
why isn't he sad?
I think on the complete opposite. I think I judged my family for grieving. I think my siblings are a little bit more emotional than I am. And a little bit. A whole lot. A whole lot. And they can't go, without mentioning my dad or my mom or something without them tearing up. And I'm just like, I would look at them with such disdain, because I'm like, what is your problem? Like, why are you doing that to yourself? Why are you allowing yourself to feel pain? And I would judge them for it. And I think to a certain extent, I thought it was dumb. I thought it was dumb and irrational for them to do that. It's because I couldn't do that for myself. I couldn't do that for myself. And there are moments where I'm like, I sit down, I'm like, okay, I want to cry. And I'm like, okay, I can't. I can't. Like, there's a blockage to allow that. And it's why, I chose to be on this podcast, because it's part of releasing that blockage to allow myself to grieve in how I see fit, because I can't, like I said, it affects my relationships or my ability to make solid relationships because of that inability to be vulnerable. And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. There's
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with being sad. My therapist tells me that all the time, and he's like, it's the human condition to be sad and to long for the life that you had, or mourn it. He tells me all the time, you didn't mourn the life that you had, you put it away. He's like, and you're going to have to do that eventually. He tells me, in due time, when you're ready. But now I know that I'm ready.
And I think you deserve that.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves that. We all
Absolutely.
deserve to move on,
Yeah.
as best as we can in our own way. I always say in our own way, because we all do mourn differently and move forward differently.
Yeah, and I think what was so challenging for me is because of the fact that I am single, and when we experienced these losses, I was also single, that it occurred to me those milestones that my brother and my sister got to have with my parents, you know, their marriage, their children, those kind of things. I was like, I won't have those. And then I think that in itself is probably the most hardest pill to swallow. And I think that's why I put it so behind in a closet, in a box, because those moments, you know, me purchasing my first home, I did it by myself. Well, not by myself, but obviously my siblings, you know, with their support, but I didn't have without a partner, or without my parents to be there.
Yeah.
My first, you know, the car that I purchased for myself, my dad would have loved to have been there to look at the car and tell me, Dad, is this a good car? Because I don't know anything about cars. Tell me, is it worth it? And he wasn't there. My mom would have loved to help me furnish my home. And those are those milestones that I don't have. And, you know, God willing, I will find a partner one day and get married. They won't be there to see that I finally found that person. And those are those little things that, it's like I said, it's a really hard pill for me to swallow, because, you know, I don't it's not about envy of my siblings, because obviously that's not what it is, but it's like they had that luxury of having those events in their life, because obviously they're older than me. And me being the baby, I didn't have that it's kind of like I try not to think of those big milestones, or not make them as big as they should be, because that constant thing is like, oh, my parents would have been ecstatic, over the moon for me to have a house or a new car or a partner, you know. But it's like I said, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to know that my parents will never meet my future partner and tell me he's a really nice guy, or see my new puppy that I just got a couple months ago. He said he's a really cute dog, or I love him, or I love my grandson. I won't ever have that. And I think those are the moments that make it even tougher.
Sure. Even though I think those moments, you should be proud of them, right? You should
Absolutely
look forward to those moments for you, knowing that those moments, you were able to get to those moments because of your parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of, you know, the work ethic that your father and your mother as well. Because we look at stay-at-home moms and think, oh, they stay at home.
No.
To me, my respects a million times to stay-at-home moms. And I say house managers, because that's what they are.
Yeah, there like is the word homemaker.
Yes,
you're making a home.
home.
And my mom did that.
So I really truly believe that those moments, when you get to those moments, I hope you see them in a different way. I hope you're proud of yourself, and I hope you tell yourself, I'm here because of them. Because of the way they raised me, right?
Yeah.
Different. Your dad raised you this way and taught you these things. Your mom did the same thing, right? So I hope that for you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I really do.
Yeah.
Now, going to a lighter topic in a sense, what can you tell us about your mom that not a lot of people know? Something cute, something funny about her, or something that not even friends or family would know about your mom.
My mom loved being a mother. She loved being a mother. She loved being a mother. But she also wanted to explore the world. She wanted to visit Italy, and she loved pasta and have fresh pasta overlooking the canals in Venice or in Rome, and she wanted to see the world. My dad, not so much, because he was a simple man. And because, obviously, as the only sole provider, didn't have the financial means. So as much as my mother loved being a homemaker and a babysitter, there was a part of her, and I had these frank conversations where she's like, I love it all. I would never give my life back. She's like, but God, would I love to just see the world. See it, and for all its glory and all its beauty. And I think that's always stood with me. So the first chance I got, I explored the world and went to Italy by myself and did these things that she will never be able to do, but I did it because I wanted to, and I could.
Now, do you feel them? Some people believe in their loved ones being with you no matter what, their soul being with you, signs that they're with you. Are you a believer of that?
I'm a believer in them 110%, but I was convinced that that doesn't happen to me. And there were moments, in my hardest moments, where I lay in bed crying and asking, like, please just tell me that you're here. Please prove to me that my faith is not wrong. And I wouldn't experience it. And then I have cousins and relatives that have that opportunity where they can say, Mom, show me a sign in something. I never had that luxury. And a part of me, I told myself, maybe it's because I blocked all these feelings that they don't want to. But recently, I did visit a Reiki healer, and she was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful woman. And she knew things, and she saw them, and she told me that specific thing. She's like, your parents are with you all the time. And I was like, well, I don't really feel it, because I ask, and she's like, do you ever misplace things, or can you have difficulty finding things? And I was like, oh, all the time. She's like, that's them. She's like, that's a very common thing for spirits or of that energy. She's like, miss things being moved all the time. She's like, so if you're experiencing that, that's them. And I was like, yep, then they're with me all the time, because I'm constantly I will leave something on the table, come back in 2 hours, and I'm like, where is it at? I swore that I left it there, and then it's on the couch. And she's like, that's them. So I'm a firm believer. For many years, I told myself, oh, they just don't want to come see me. They're mad because I haven't grieved them properly. They don't want to come say hi. They don't want to show me a sign. But this healer kind of told me, they're always there with you. They just show it differently.
Good. Is there anything that you would like to tell the viewers watching us today? Something about what advice that you would give them as far as grieving or not grieving, not being able to grieve? Is there something you would like to let them know?
It doesn't get harder. It doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier. You just learn to live with it. There are moments, like I said, that like today, where I feel it and it comes back and it feels like yesterday. And you just learn to live with it. That's the irony about it. You think something like this is going to kill you, and you feel like you're dying. but you just learn to, I guess the word is live with it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You live with it, and it's unfortunate. We're all gonna pass away. It's unfortunate that I lost my parents at such a young age without having them see the successes that I have now. I think of them every day. I don't want to be sad, so I don't let myself be sad. But you just learn to live with it. And that's, people say it'll get better over time, and it doesn't. You just learn, it becomes a second nature to have that feeling of grief, in my perspective. And that's it. That's how you cope. And you get a good therapist. It's essential. Like, that's also, you have to get a great therapist to help you. But you'll survive. And that's another thing. Like, it won't get better. You'll learn to live with it, but you'll survive. And you'll be able to make memories and be happy and live the life that these people that you love so much don't have that opportunity anymore. And you, to a certain extent, you live for them, and they'll always live on. And like they said, no one really dies until the last person that knows them is gone. And I like to think that, my parents are never really gone. And there are moments, like today, where I think of them and I'm like, God, all these little flashes of memories and all these things. Like, oh my God, I was once a son, and that was beautiful.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for being here, for opening up. It's really, truly been a pleasure.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And thank you to our viewers. Once again, remember your loved ones that are no longer with you, and love the ones that you have, those that matter, those that you want in your life. Love them with all your heart. Tell them you love them, hug them, love on them, and please be blessed. Thank you so much.